Chapter 861, Integrate with the Sword. Zhang Weiyu slept on a kong, while Lu Shu took some dry grass and lay them on the floor for him to sleep on. Not long after, Zhang Weiyu fell asleep. Lu Shu rested his head on his arms, but did not fall asleep. He had mysteriously come to this world. He had experienced many things in just one day. He forced himself to quickly sort out his thoughts and hoped to understand what this world was. He had only eaten a single bun today. He ate half in the afternoon and another half at night. His muscles started to ache, just like when he had worked after getting out of the orphanage. But back then, he still had Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu would obediently help him to wash his clothes. When he saw the clothes outside the window, he would feel calmer. But now, he was alone in a dangerous place. He was searching for a way to return home. He did not know what Lu Xiaoyu was doing. Would she be very upset? Lu Shu wanted to flip through his record of distress points and see if there were anything related to Lu Xiaoyu. If there was just one sentence at the back, it would be a huge relief. It was fine even if it was a complaint from Lu Xiaoyu. But he discovered that it was as if distress points could not go through the barrier between the two worlds. Lu Shu got up and walked to courtyard. He slowly crawled on the ground and started to do push-ups. Even if his arms were shaking, he persevered. Sweat dripped from his chin to the ground until Lu Shu had no more strength to support himself. When he could no longer continue doing push-ups, he simply sat with his legs crossed on the ground and rested. Zhang Weiyu leaned against the wall and folded his arms. He asked, "Do you want to become strong that badly?" "Honestly, it's fine even if you are not strong. Didn't the old king of gods die even though he was so strong? Just be a peasant. If you can't stand the hunger, just become a slave. Either way, you'll be able to live." Lu Shu looked at Zhang Weiyu. "That is not living a life. That is living for a few moments. If I live just to eat, then what is the meaning of life?" There were still more reasons that Lu Shu did not reveal. He wanted to go home and find Lu Xiaoyu. There were no techniques that were suitable for Lu Shu. He could only train. Since other beings could strengthen their physique by absorbing spirit qi, humans could as well, right? Lu Shu had also thought of a problem in the past. An ordinary person on Earth had realized that after the dawn of the magically rich era, their aptitude increased by leaps and bounds as a result of training, much more than in the past. Thus, in the 2 years since the dawn of the magically rich era, some athletes had achieved the speed and strength of a Class F. There was a high concentration of magical energy here. If he simply trained, would he be able to achieve the same results? Lu Shu did not need to be very strong. It would be enough as long as he was able to break free of the chains. Even if he had not reached rank 1, he could safely find a way home. Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu. He did not express his opinion and walked back into the house. "If you want to train, then train. Just don't neglect your work. I didn't expect you to be so fierce with your pale and clean appearance. Go ahead and train. In this world, those who succeed are called kings, and those who fail are called bandits. Those who succeed are often very fierce." Lu Shu looked at Zhang Weiyu and said, "Brother, you are a peasant with a worse life than a slave. Stop criticizing me." From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 399. Zhang Weiyu angrily went back to sleep. He wanted to praise this youngster for his hard work, but his compliments did not go through. After Lu Shu finished resting, he stood up again. He found a piece of firewood and recalled how he had trained with Li Xianni. But as he prepared to train, he suddenly had an idea. He slowed down his movements. As the piece of firewood slowly fell, Lu Shu lowered his waist and raised his arms. He had changed from a smash to a pick. Although Lu Shu's power was gone, his swordplay was still as awe-inspiring as before. No one on Earth was as skilled in swordplay as Lu Shu, except for Li Xianni. He had memorized diverse variations of the 13-letter rhyme by heart. Back then, he trained like Li Xianyi. He would slow down his movements. This was the process to integrate with the sword. Lu Shu occasionally sped up and slowed down. There were times when his body could not keep up. But every time he could not keep up, it was as if he was aligned with the world. Spirit qi gently seeped into his muscles and bones, nourishing his body. In the past, spirit qi completely could not enter his body, because the celestial map was too powerful. Now, Lu Shu's swordplay was more powerful than his actual strength. This was the result of waking up at 3 a.m. every day to train. This was the reward the world had given him for his efforts. He would be able to communicate with the heaven and the earth when he reached rank 1. Lu Shu pondered. He had the boundary, but not the strength. Then why did spirit qi enter his body as he trained? Was the world slowly helping him to make up for what he lacked? The spirit qi simply helped him to strengthen his physique. Lu Shu felt that throughout this training process, his body was growing much stronger. After this incident, Lu Shu realized that there were some gaps in the training of his body. He wanted to make up for them. But no matter what, he desperately needed this method to protect himself. When dawn broke, Zhang Weiyu walked out and stretched. When he saw Lu Shu, he was taken aback. "Did you train the whole night?" Lu Shu thought about it and said, "I was too tired, so I slept in the courtyard." "Didn't I say?" Zhang Weiyu laughed. "Ordinary people like you who are obsessed over training should take appropriate breaks." In reality, Lu Shu had trained the whole night. Most importantly, he realized that the more he trained, the more energetic he became. All the fatigue that he had felt after a day of work had disappeared. He felt fortunate that back then, he was not afraid of the difficulties he would face when training in swordplay. Thanks to that, today had taken a turn for the better. Although he was far away from even reaching rank 6, Lu Shu knew that it was only a matter of time. At least he had a shortcut in this world, where techniques were controlled by class. At that moment, a group of men on horses dashed over. When they came to Zhang Weiyu's door, their leader said impatiently, "My owner sent me here to deliver this gift. Will the handsome young man accept it?" Before they set off, their owner had told them that people with the strength of character would not accept these kinds of gifts. If Lu Shu did not accept it, they would bring it back. Thus, they were just here for formalities. They did not want to waste too much time. Lu Shu looked at their seals. They were from the Yu family. Lu Shu furrowed his eyebrows. Yesterday, he had just established himself as someone with strength of character. He could not destroy his image just like that. "Is there anything to eat inside?" From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 666. From Chapter 862, All fair-skinned people are pretty. In front of Lu Shu, a narrow path ran through the countryside view. Clay walls and simple wooden fences lined the sides, outside of which stood tall horses and slaves armored with a saber each. The slaves kept an untidy hairstyle and were dressed in robes and boots. At that instant, Lu Shu had the feeling that he had traveled back to ancient times. Honestly speaking, it felt more like he had traveled across time, rather than space. In fact, Lu Shu would have rejected the gift from the Yu family if it had happened before that night because practically speaking, he needed their protection. Yet, he did not care that much, and neither would he willingly become a slave. After all, he had initially turned Nie Ting down on his offer to make him the 9th heavenly king, let alone becoming a slave. But it was a different case now. Lu Shu had the confidence to attain rank for abilities, equivalent to Class D on Earth, in 1 month. The longer he spent there, the stronger he could be. According to Zhang Weiyu, the most powerful landlord in town was merely a rank 4. Rank 3 and above could only be attained by aristocrats because the necessary techniques for high-level cultivation were only reserved for the upper class. Nevertheless, Lu Shu was equipped with a complete set of cultivation skills. While the aristocrats could only achieve rank 2 at most, he would be able to climb even higher. Moreover, he was no longer the rookie who was new to society. Given his rich life experience, he could make sounder decisions than many landlords and aristocrats in the town. Therefore, he decided to forego the protection for food. The slaves, who were there to send him presents, looked at each other in confusion. They had not expected him to accept their offerings, as their landlord had described him as a man of integrity. But before they could react, Lu Shu had started to give orders. "Come on. Put everything in the room. Don't dirty the food." The slaves did as instructed. Zhang Weiyu warned him softly, "You will lose the Yu family's protection if you continue on like this. In fact, a pretty face can't promise you safety in this world. Let me tell you, there are 3 major landlords in the town and the Yu family doesn't call the shots. Without the Yu's protection, the other 2 families can snatch you away as they wish. They are pretty nasty. Besides, the aristocrats, who are the real bosses here, are not interested in negotiating with you. Everyone has to listen to him." Lu Shu gave a silent nod of acknowledgement. Now he learned that the major forces in Tianjing town were an upper-class man and 3 influential landlords. Moreover, the entire town was the aristocrat's feudal estate, rendering him the real person in charge of this land. In addition, Lu Shu disagreed with the part where he was described as having a pretty face. Although Coral had once called him good-looking too, she had added that he was not the best face she had seen. However, Lu Shu had suddenly come to the realization that the people in the Luniverse were rather dark in skin color, and he was one of the very few with fair skin. Was this why it was thought that all fair-skinned people were pretty? Lu Shu pondered over it. Instantly, he developed a good disposition towards this world. Yet, Zhang Weiyu noticed that Lu Shu had not taken his words seriously. After the slaves delivered all the items to the room, they seemed dissatisfied with the shabby condition of Zhang Weiyu's house. The leader of the group strutted out of the house and said, "We're done here. We are going back to report." When he had just finished speaking, he saw Lu Shu already unpacking the present boxes in the room. The box was wrapped in red paper, which gave it a festive vibe. The slaves were rendered speechless. Then, they shouted loudly again, "We are going back." "Sure. Go." Lu Shu dismissed them with a wave. He removed the wrapper to reveal a box full of desserts. What a pleasant surprise! After the slaves left, Zhang Weiyu swallowed his saliva as he watched Lu Shu munching on the food. Lu Shu pushed an unopened dessert box over to Zhang Weiyu and said, "Here. It's for you." Zhang Weiyu rejected the offer with a shake of his head. "Keep it to yourself. You need a good diet for cultivation training. Besides, eating this is not helpful to me." As he said that, Zhang Weiyu's expressions suddenly changed. "But I would suggest you do not finish all of it in a hurry. The Yu girl is not someone you imagine to be. I doubt she will be so kind to you ever again." Lu Shu smiled but did not stop eating. He knew that Zhang Weiyu was smart, warm-hearted but straightforward when speaking. However, Lu Shu did not mind him. The only thought in his mind now was to carry on with his swordplay practice. Furthermore, he actually hoped that the shackles over his celestial map and the Sea of Qi could be removed at a slower pace so as to allow more time for training his physical strength with the rare introduction of Spirit Qi. If the celestial map was freed too early, the Spirit Qi in his body would be overpowered by the celestial powers, terminating his physical training prematurely. In fact, Lu Shu felt lost. But he had to comfort himself this way since the shackles could not be removed in the near future. After a while, Zhang Weiyu could no longer stand the temptation of watching Lu Shu munch on the good food. He threw a hoe over his shoulder and yelled, "Okay. You've eaten enough. Let's go and farm the land."
Nah.
Lu Shu rejected him. "Wait till I finish all the desserts." After a short pause, Zhang Weiyu let out a cold laugh in contempt. Do you really think you can live on well like this? They won't send you any more stuff after knowing your personality today. So what will you eat if you don't farm the land? Lu Shu shook his head and insisted. I'm going after I finish the food. He was not slacking off. Instead, he was busy replenishing his powers and he did not wish to waste his time, the most precious resource in this dangerous world, on anything unnecessary. Earlier in the morning, Lu Shu had calculated the time and concluded that he would be able to reach rank 6 in 2 days, given that he could only practice at night. Yet, if he could make use of his time in the day, he would be able to achieve rank 6 by the next morning. In Tianjing town, most of the slaves were lower than rank 6. Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu with a cold sneer. Now, his impression of Lu Shu had changed to a lazy good-for-nothing. He said, "Stop dreaming. We only have one life. How can you practice cultivation with this attitude? Nonsense." After he left, Lu Shu started practicing his swordplay in the yard with breathless attention. As the surrounding spirit chi flowed with his movement, Lu Shu could sense the increasing strength in his muscles and bones. The operation of his organs had become stronger too. Invisibly and inaudibly, his blood pumped through his veins powerfully like rolling drums. When Zhang Weiyu returned home after his work, he saw footprints on the dry ground in the backyard. Some of the footprints were as deep as over half an inch. Chapter 863 The Brothel. Zhang Weiyu walked into the house. Their house was separated into 2 areas, one for sleeping and the other for cooking. Inside the small room, Lu Shu was boiling water on top of a kitchen range. Zhang Weiyu leaned his hoe on the wall and asked, puzzled, "What are you doing?" "Boiling hot water for drinking." "I can use the remaining for a hot bath too," answered Lu Shu with a smile. Zhang Weiyu gasped in shock. "For drinking? Can't you just drink it directly? Besides, you can wash yourself in the river. It took me great effort to carry the water here. Why are you wasting it?" There was a giant water vat in the room. Usually the vat was not full because Zhang Weiyu was not strong enough to carry too much water every day. He already had to struggle to carry enough water for daily use. Thus, water was a precious resource in his household. If the water was used up, he had to walk to the river over 3 kilometers away for more water. Lu Shu replied with a grin. "Untreated water is not potable. Too dirty. But don't worry about me finishing your water. The vat is almost full now." Finding it hard to believe, Zhang Weiyu shot a glance at the vat and realized it was really full to the brim. He stared at Lu Shu in disbelief. "Did you carry it home?" Zhang Weiyu found it incredible that a slacker like him would suddenly be willing to traverse long distances and bring back enough water to fill the vat. It was no easy job after all. Lu Shu laughed it off. He took a bowl and poured himself some boiled water. Honestly speaking, untreated water had an intolerable smell that made it hard to swallow for Lu Shu. However, the folks in the Luniverse had gotten used to living with low-quality food and water supplies. A couple of decades ago, countless people died from the bacteria in their diet and only those with a certain type of antibody survived the disaster. Hence, without his original powers, it would be wiser for Lu Shu to exercise extra caution in this world. Zhang Weiyu mumbled, "Slaves like you are so picky." Lu Shu's expressions darkened at once. "What slaves?" Zhang Weiyu did not answer. Instead, he murmured, as he recalled his past, "Your boiling water has actually reminded me of the days in the past. Back then, our life was not so difficult. When the old King of Gods was still alive, he standardized our spoken and written language, our currency and our measuring units. Moreover, for some reason, the old king made it a rule that all residents of the Luniverse were not allowed to drink untreated water, nor to relieve their bowels in public. He had even disseminated books and resources and enabled education for all children. After that, he started an examination system which allowed those from a humble family background to climb up the social ladder. I wish the old king was still alive. If he were, the world would not be in such a mess. Lu Shu was stunned. He genuinely suspected that this old king had visited Earth before. Wait, that's actually possible, as the two worlds were literally connected. As the strongest man in the universe, that guy could simply visit Earth like how Earthlings traveled overseas. Who knows? For some reason, Lu Shu suddenly felt that a king was more humanized now. It was as though he was no longer a deity who distanced himself from the masses and proudly received their worship. Instead, he was more like a human being. Lu Shu asked casually, what else did the old king do? That caught Zhang Weiyu's interest. He eagerly went on. The old king lived a legendary life and he had so many stories to tell. He bravely led his soldiers and fought on the battlefield for 3,000 years, slaughtering countless enemies. After that, he ended the war fast and sweet. The story that I love the most is in fact well liked by everyone here, and I've gotten bored hearing it over and over again. One time, on his way to visit the East Lord of Heaven, Yu Fuyao, he walked past a brothel. Lu Shu's face brightened. I didn't know there were brothels here. Don't go there if you want to practice cultivation, said Zhang Weiyu, as he cast Lu Shu a look of contempt. Then, he continued, as the old king walked past, a girl purposely threw a wooden club, the one used to keep a window open, at him in an attempt to catch his attention. The old king looked up, and the girl said, Sir, could you send the club up, please? In return for your favor, you can do anything to me. In the end, the old king went up to her with the club and then asked the girl to write, I will never throw a wooden club again, 30 times. Lu Shu drew a startled breath. Why did the old king seem to share the same personality as him? Yet, Lu Shu felt that if he were the old king, he would probably make the girl cry. No, he should not be that mean to a brothel worker. However, through Zhang Weiyu's stories, Lu Shu had developed a liking towards the old king of gods. In any case, he maintained his manners before beauties. Speaking of which, was he the puppet master's king? Or was there another one? Lu Shu was inclined to believe the latter, as Nie Ting, Shi Xuejin and Li Xianyi had all refused to talk about the king as though he was a taboo. Yet, from Zhang Weiyu's narrative, he did not seem scary at all. Or was it because Lu Shu had never experienced the wars during his reign? At night, Lu Shu resumed his sword practice after Zhang Weiyu went to sleep. Before that, Zhang Weiyu earnestly advised him that he had to be down to earth and save some desserts for the future, and that Lu Shu had to start farming with him if he wanted to be rich. Lu Shu laughed it off. He insisted on his own plan. He picked his weapon from a pile of firewood. He had broken quite a few branches during the day when he unleashed his force. It was at that moment when Lu Shu realized that his strength control had not reached perfection yet. The first step to achieve supreme control over sword energy was to control one's own strength. The next day, Zhang Weiyu asked Lu Shu in surprise as he walked out of the room, "Did you sleep outside again?" Yet, Zhang Weiyu also noticed that Lu Shu had become more refreshed over the days. Lu Shu was unconscious when they just met, and looked low in energy after he woke up. Now, however, he seemed fully energized. Lu Shu smiled. I'm not going to the field with you today. I need to finish the remaining desserts. Zhang Weiyu warned again, you'll finish it today. You have to prepare for the future. At this moment, they heard the clatter of horse hooves from afar. Zhang Weiyu's jaws dropped in astonishment. Could that be? The slaves from the day before appeared in their sight. The leader said in a muffled voice, "My owner asked us to send you more presents and invites you to her mansion. Would you be willing to come?" Lu Shu laughed. "Leave the presents. But I'm not going." The leader flogged his horse and returned. Before he left, he said, "My owner has said that she doesn't mind if you are not going this time for the sake of your pretty face. But she believes that you will come one day. Chapter 864 How Fragrant. Lu Shu looked as the slaves urged on the horses using their whips. He sighed and said to Zhang Weiyu, I think we can eat for a few more days. Zhang Weiyu felt that since this young man had appeared, his life had entered a fictional world. It was very bizarre. Not only had dim sum, been delivered, they had received a pig trotter as well. Furthermore, this young man had even been invited to visit their house. How rare. Forget it. But after Lu Shu rejected the offer, the slave revealed that Yu Dai had already told them. Since Lu Shu was good-looking, she would let him off. Zhang Weiyu looked at Lu Shu in shock. I have always thought that people with strength of character depended on their skills to survive, but you depend on your looks. Lu Shu modestly laughed. I have no choice. The heavens have given me food to eat. From Zhang Weiyu's distress, plus 481. This way, Lu Shu patiently integrated with the sword according to the prescribed order. Thankfully, he no longer needed to plant crops. Every day, people would give him food. Zhang Weiyu was rather puzzled. Was this a story where the daughter of a rich family fell in love with a poor boy? Such stories narrated love that transcended social classes in an extravagant manner, as if this was the only form of love. Furthermore, it seemed that the head of the Yu family had read too many books. She might have actually believed in such stories. On the first day, Lu Shu gave the dim sum to Zhang Weiyu, but Zhang Weiyu did not eat them. On the second day, Lu Shu gave the dim sum to Zhang Weiyu, but Zhang Weiyu did not eat them. On the third day, Lu Shu cooked a plate of pork for Zhang Weiyu. Zhang Weiyu ate very happily. It was very difficult for Lu Shu to cook this plate of pork. Other than salt, there were no other seasonings in this barren land. Typically, people would only kill a pig on New Year's Day or other festivals and sell the pork to slave owners and aristocrats. They would use the small amount of fat to extract some oil. They could not bear to use the oil to cook. If they were greedy, they would mix a small amount of oil with their food. As Zhang Weiyu ate the pork, he excitedly said, let me tell you, this pork is not the best. I once ate the glazed flaming chicken at the palace. Now that was a delicacy. Lu Shu glanced at Zhang Weiyu. Have you been to the palace? Zhang Weiyu did not speak and continued to eat. The palace was in the middle of the manors that belonged to the four lords of heaven. They were neatly divided and arranged in a square. But that was what had happened in the past. After many years of war, the boundaries were unclear. The field that Lu Shu and Zhang Weiyu lived at was under the control of the South Lord of Heaven, Wen Zaifu. But 30 kilometers to the west was the territory of the West Lord of Heaven, Duanmu Huangqi. No wonder Zhang Weiyu had said that if a war happened, he had to run away with him. This place was along the border. If a war occurred, the first place to be affected would be their fields. What is the palace like? Lu Shu asked. Zhang Weiyu wiped his mouth. The fields are terrible compared to the palace. Over there, the houses are arranged in tight rows. The slave owners there don't dare to speak loudly. If you spray water there, you might accidentally wet somewhere. Over there, the ground is covered with limestone bricks. The children of the slave owners can play on the streets. There are even people who teach them songs. Rich families have wide and majestic doors. There are even red lanterns on each side of the door and slaves who guard their houses. Back then, the streets were full of people during festivals. The masters of the slaves would all go out on the streets. Why? Because only then could they see how the female aristocrats look like.
Ha! Ha!
Zhang Weiyu laughed boorishly. In the past, I thought that the female aristocrats all looked like goddesses. But after I took a look at them, I started to question my existence. Why are they so ugly? Lu Shu thought about it and said, are you afraid that you wouldn't be chosen because the families are related by marriage? Zhang Weiyu gave him a thumbs up. I didn't expect a slave like you to have knowledge to come up with that. Go away, said Lu Shu. Now that Zhang Weiyu depended on Lu Shu for food, he was not as offensive as before. Lu Shu chatted with him like a friend. Zhang Weiyu suddenly said, I have to visit my relatives tomorrow. Help me to take care of the crops. No, Lu Shu did not even have to think before rejecting. The crops will be the same even if no one takes care of them. It's only one day. Will the crops be able to grow that much? Zhang Weiyu shouted, don't take for granted that the Yu family is sending you good food. Just wait until they're bored of you. You'll still have to rely on my crops to survive. I won't do it even if you describe it like that. Lu Shu expressionlessly rejected him. He had been here for almost half a month. Lu Shu was about to reach rank 5. When he reached rank 4, he would be able to walk sideways along the fields. The strongest person in these fields was a rank 3 aristocrat. But Lu Shu understood that even if the aristocrats here were high in rank, they did not have the outlook and techniques. Although he was only a rank 4, he had the confidence to kill a rank 3. But Lu Shu suddenly felt that Zhang Weiyu's trip would not be as simple as visiting his relatives. He had far too many mysteries. It was as if a civilian suddenly went to the palace, which was thousands of kilometers away. How would they go there? How would they return? There were no planes or trains here. Zhang Weiyu did not avoid him, but did not speak in detail either. But all these had nothing to do with him. He was just a visitor in this world. He would eventually leave after finding a way out. At the same time in a hot pot restaurant in Chuanzhou, Tiger Ji wiped his oily mouth and said, this tripe is amazing. Simply cook it in boiling water and add oil, vinegar, and mashed garlic, but it's so good. Even the glazed flaming chicken in the palace cannot compare to this. After coming here, I understood why the old king of gods loved to come here. Cloudy sighed. It's a world of difference in terms of food. I feel that it's the seasonings. The methods of using seasonings there are terrible, Tiger Ji sighed. But are you not at all worried that something will happen to him there? Will he be angry if he finds out that we are here eating and drinking? Cloudy pondered for a long time. The old king of gods still has many secret weapons there. If they are used, his safety can be assured. Now, we have returned to rank 1. If we want to go through the Celestial Gate, we will have to reduce our class. The Celestial Gate was left behind by the old king of gods so that we could come here and eat. He can come and go as he wishes, but we cannot. If Big Brother had not told us, we might not even know where the door is. Now, we have used up all the fruits that the old king of gods have left for us. If we forcibly reduce our class, we might not be able to go back. Tiger Ji scratched his head. Then what do we do? My conscience can't rest easy. Cloudy thought about it. Should we tell Xiaoyu where the gate is? Her blood can be used to activate the gate. Good idea. Tiger Ji's eyes lit up. She has not reached rank 1, but she has the combat power of a rank 1. It will be just as nice. The lamb kidneys are cooked. Be careful of the pepper inside. Waiter, bring us another plate of tripe. Small bite-sized portions of food served in small steamer baskets or on a small plate. Chapter 865, An Entire Wall of Poems. Zhang Weiyu headed west. Lu Shu did not know whether he had deliberately headed north before going in another direction. In the west was the territory of the West Lord of Heaven, Duanmu Huangqi. He would reach after crossing a hill and a river. Zhang Weiyu had told Lu Shu that in the past, the female slaves who lived in the peasant households nearby would bathe in the river. These female slaves were much more good-looking than the aristocrats. Lu Shu understood. For some reason, Zhang Weiyu was unhappy with the aristocrats. It was like in the journey to the west, where the characters headed to the western heaven. When they reached it, they were greeted with "Welcome to Tai Ling," they had walked in the wrong direction. They had gotten it completely wrong. There were no accurate boundary lines here. Towns were used instead. After a war, if a town was seized, this meant that they would lose the ground occupied by the town. Lu Shu felt that no matter what Zhang Weiyu did, it was not important. This person was very strange. Lu Shu discovered that even slaves who had not undergone training had 3 to 4 times the physical strength of ordinary people on Earth, but Zhang Weiyu was different. Lu Shu felt that he was weaker than ordinary humans. This was an unusual state. It was as if there was a story behind it. But all these had nothing to do with Lu Shu. More importantly, he had to firmly and succinctly progress to rank 5. When he trained in the morning, he suddenly thought that even if he could only eat buns here, he would eventually be able to find a method of cultivation when the time came. He used a tree branch to write on the ground. "One day, I will be able to fulfill my dreams." His words were bold and strong. They possessed sword energy within them. If those who practiced swordplay saw these words on the ground, they might be able to realize something. This time, the branch did not break in Lu Shu's hands. It was as if his physical power made everything he wanted possible. His swordplay rapidly improved. Lu Shu was somewhat happy, because the better his swordplay was, the faster the rate at which the world supplied him with spirit qi. He would need only 20 days to reach rank 4 instead of a month. As he was training, the sound of horses galloping could be heard from the end of the road. They had arrived as planned. What would he receive this time? He looked out and saw that the lady called Yu Dai had come in person. Yu Dai stopped her horse and stood beside Lu Shu. She looked down at Lu Shu. "This peasant. Do I have to personally come down before you are willing to accept my invitation?" With his swordplay in hand, Lu Shu was more stubborn. "Even if you personally come, I might not accept your invitation." At that moment, Yu Dai saw the words that Lu Shu had written in the ground and was dumbfounded. Lu Shu looked back at his words. Did Yu Dai actually understand them? Would he become the immortal poet one in this world? After that, would he attract aristocrats as his followers and reach the peak of his life? Then, people would feed him every day. He would be able to safely train and reach rank 1 before breaking free. In this world, intellectuals were regarded as important by the aristocrats. According to Zhang Weiyu, a slave who could teach could be worth a ranch. This was very valuable. Furthermore, those slaves who were able to teach would be regarded as important by the head of the family as well. They would be treated much better than the other slaves. Furthermore, some peasants would be crowned as guests of honor due to their knowledge. This was an established practice by the old king of gods. Subordinates followed the example of their superiors. If the old king of gods placed high importance on scholars, the lower levels would do the same. In the past, a slave owner's family became aristocrats because their son was very smart. This rapid progress in social class was very tempting. Furthermore, Zhang Weiyu had said that scholars were well received in brothels. A good poem, even if it was incomplete, would allow the poet to eat and drink well at the brothel for a month. When Lu Shu heard about this, he felt that this world was not bad. Lu Shu stood tall and proud. He wanted to make himself seem like a casual poet. Suddenly Yu Dai said, "I didn't expect that you liked the old king of gods poems as well." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Wait. Something was wrong. He wanted to act like the immortal poet. But someone was even more shameless than him. Lu Shu was slightly puzzled. He asked, "Which of his poems do you like best?" Yu Dai excitedly said, "I didn't think that I would meet someone who knows poems in this town. I like Aru Mangling one. On, we rode. On, we rode. Startling the gulls and herons on the beach."
Ha! Ha!
Lu Shu's expression darkened. He had copied poems from both male and female poets. The old king of gods had a very broad range. He simply did not give others a chance. How shameless. Thus, he had normalized language and standardized writing so that everyone could read his poems. This history did not even make sense. Why were you so insistent on copying? Yu Dai looked very excited, as if she had encountered someone who understood her. None of these crude slaves understand the talent behind these poems. You are very good. Lu Shu thought about it and said, I only know a little. Do you have a collection of the Old King of Gods poems? I want to take a look. He had said so because he wanted to see whether the Old King of Gods had missed out anything that he could make up for. If he knew what the Old King of Gods had copied, their poems would not overlap. Then follow me to the palace. Yu Dai said excitedly, it is too inconvenient to transport an entire wall of poems back and forth. When Lu Shu heard an entire wall of poems, he started to despair. How long had the Old King of Gods lived for? Was he bored because he had lived for so long? Yes or no? Huh? Lu Shu suddenly felt that when the length of his life was no longer important to the Old King of Gods, his life was like a game. Since he was the strongest and had a long life, he could play as he wished. Okay, I will accompany you to the palace. But let me say this first. I will not sell myself to be a slave, said Lu Shu calmly. He suddenly wanted to understand the Old King of Gods. On the other hand, it seemed as if Yu Dai had completely changed her attitude. From now on, you are my friend. Don't talk about being a slave. Lu Shu thought. Had he benefited from the king? Needless to say, Lu Shu was suddenly very curious about the Old King of Gods. He was the head of the world, but he was very down to earth. He had angered a prostitute at a brothel and even copied poems. Interesting. This was Lu Shu's review. But Lu Shu was slightly puzzled. Why did the Old King of Gods fall? Had his life naturally ended, or had there been an accident?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, then we just put 'em on the shelf. Try to look to the heavens.